My name is Serafina Sarah Maxwell, and I'm 26 years old, currently navigating the bustling, vibrant, and perpetually rain-kissed streets of Seattle. If you were to meet me today, you'd likely observe a woman with an undeniable quiet strength radiating from her eyes, a meticulously organized planner clutched in her hand, and an air of calm, almost serene efficiency that profoundly belies the turbulent, often agonizing past that shaped her. I am a cybersecurity analyst, a professional problem solver specializing in digital forensics. My days are spent methodically uncovering secrets hidden deep within complex data streams, tracing the invisible footprints of digital intrusions, and fortifying the defenses of vulnerable systems. It's a demanding field that necessitates precision, unwavering logic, and an almost intuitive ability to discern intricate patterns where others perceive only chaotic noise. Skills I paradoxically honed not within the sterile confines of a university lab, but in the relentless, often brutal crucible of my own family. But to truly comprehend how I evolved into the person I am today, the one capable of dissecting a sophisticated network breach with detached, clinical clarity, I must invite you to journey back to my former life, to the sprawling, seemingly idyllic suburbs of Bellwood, Washington. There, beneath the veneer of perfectly manicured lawns, grand, imposing houses, and an unshakable illusion of prosperity, I learned a harsh, enduring truth: that family isn't always a sanctuary, and sometimes the deepest, most agonizing wounds are inflicted by those who are supposed to protect, nurture, and cherish you. Bellwood, as I recall it from my childhood, was a town saturated with whispers and defined by its meticulously maintained facades. Every house, every garden, every social interaction seemed to be part of an elaborate performance. My father, Robert Maxwell, was a prominent real estate investor, a man whose name echoed, almost reverently, through every major development project in the greater Puget Sound region. He was a master of public relations, charming and charismatic in social settings, a virtuoso of backslapping camaraderie and dazzling, disarming smiles that could melt ice. But behind the closed doors of our opulent mansion, he was a volatile, unpredictable storm, quick to erupt in a thunderous rage, quicker still to deflect blame onto anyone but himself, leaving a trail of emotional wreckage in his wake. My mother, Charlotte Maxwell, was the quintessential society wife, a meticulously coiffed figure perpetually draped in the latest designer fashions, her entire existence a carefully choreographed performance of high-profile charity galas, exclusive country club lunches, and elegant yet emotionally sterile dinner parties. She was utterly consumed by appearances, by the relentless, all-consuming obsession with maintaining the flawless illusion of the perfect, powerful Maxwell family, no matter the cost to her own soul or ours. My older sister Vivian, 3 years my senior, was my mother's favored replica. Breathtakingly beautiful, relentlessly ambitious, and possessed of a chilling talent for manipulation that bordered on a dark artistry, she was the golden child, destined, from birth it seemed, for a brilliant, financially advantageous marriage and a life of effortless, unearned luxury. And then there was me, Sarah. I was the quiet one, the observant one, the diligently responsible one. From the earliest age, I instinctively became the fixer, the silent problem solver, the one who meticulously, exhaustingly, cleaned up the emotional debris left in the tumultuous wake of my family's increasingly chaotic and self-serving lives. From a remarkably young age, I was subtly yet profoundly conditioned to internalize the belief that my intrinsic worth was inextricably tied to my utility, to my ability to serve the needs of the family. While Vivian effortlessly dazzled at ballet recitals, effortlessly charmed her way through the hallowed halls of exclusive prep schools, and navigated complex social hierarchies with an almost predatory ease, I was the one meticulously balancing the family's labyrinthine, often precarious budgets when Dad's latest speculative ventures inevitably hit a snag. I was the one proofreading Vivian's sprawling, often plagiarized college application essays late into the night, fueled by cold coffee and a quiet resignation, simply because she was perpetually too engrossed in her whirlwind social calendar to bother. I was the one perpetually mediating my parents' explosive, earth-shattering arguments, learning early to dissect their volatile, irrational emotions, to identify the logical fault lines in their illogical rage, to find the subtle patterns in their predictable cycles of blame and recrimination. It was in this chaotic, unpredictable environment that I found a strange, almost perverse comfort in the cold, hard facts of numbers and data, a serene refuge from the swirling, unpredictable quicksand of their emotional demands. And it was precisely that early exposure, that desperate need for order amidst disorder, that sparked and then fueled my enduring fascination with cybersecurity in the quiet, methodical, logical world of protecting information, of imposing order on digital chaos, a stark and comforting contrast to the unprotected, vulnerable, and deeply messy reality of my home life. My father's business, Maxwell Holdings, was a sprawling, seemingly impenetrable empire, but one built precariously on a foundation of audacious debt and high-stakes speculation. There were always whispers, hushed and anxious, of near collapses, of last-minute razor-thin deals that miraculously saved them from utter ruin. As I grew older, these whispers became louder, more frequent, almost a constant hum of impending disaster. My father, prone to bombastic, self-aggrandizing pronouncements and reckless, high-risk gambles, would often find himself teetering perilously on the precipice of catastrophic financial disaster. And each time, with a chilling predictability that became my burden, I was the one who quietly, invisibly stepped in, armed with the rudimentary yet rapidly expanding financial knowledge I'd painstakingly gleaned from his haphazard, often deliberately opaque paperwork. I worked tirelessly, often in secret, to untangle the complex knots of debt, to find the hidden leverage points, to smooth over the ruffled, indignant feathers of angry, increasingly aggressive creditors. I became remarkably adept at navigating arcane legal documents, at sifting through mountains of disjointed, often contradictory financial data, laboring for days on end to find the one crucial detail, the one overlooked loophole that could pull them back from the brink. My college summers were spent not interning at cutting-edge tech firms like my fortunate peers, but instead buried alive in dusty physical ledgers and endless digital spreadsheets, playing financial detective for a family that never once truly acknowledged my indispensable efforts, let alone expressed genuine gratitude. The emotional toll of this relentless, thankless labor was immense, a crushing weight that bore down on my spirit. My mother, so utterly fixated on maintaining their precarious social standing and the illusion of perfection, would often call me late at night, her voice hushed and brittle with barely suppressed panic, recounting some new disaster, some perceived slight to their meticulously crafted reputation. "Sarah," she'd plead, her voice thin with anxiety, "you have to fix this. Your father is beside himself, absolutely distraught. Vivian's engagement party is next month, a truly vital event, and we simply cannot have this scandal overshadow it." There was never a genuine, "How are you, darling?" Never a flicker of concern for my own emotional or physical well-being, only the relentless, suffocating demand to maintain the family's flawless, yet increasingly fragile facade. Vivian, meanwhile, floated effortlessly above it all, serene in her self-absorption, occasionally deigning to drop a casual yet undeniably urgent request. "Sarah, darling, can you just whip up that business proposal for Liam's new startup? You're simply so brilliant with words, so efficient." It was never truly a request, always an unyielding expectation, delivered with that charming, dazzling smile that seemed to disarm everyone else but me, the one who saw the cold calculation beneath it. They were two planets revolving around their own self-interest, with me as their silent, unacknowledged gravitational pull. I finally graduated from the University of California, Berkeley, with a degree in computer science, specializing in data analytics and a burgeoning interest in cybersecurity. a field I had consciously chosen precisely because it was logical, clear, unambiguous, and, most importantly, far removed from the emotional quicksand and moral ambiguities of my family. I had a promising, indeed enviable job offer from a major tech firm in Silicon Valley, a genuine golden ticket to a new life, a chance to define myself on my own terms. But just as I was about to pack my meticulously planned bags, the dreaded call came. It wasn't a whisper this time, it was a deafening roar. My father's biggest, most audacious real estate venture, the towering luxury condominium complex known as the Evergreen Towers, had spectacularly, catastrophically collapsed. It wasn't just a construction flaw. It was a cascading series of overlooked environmental regulations, fraudulent permits, and a monumental, almost criminally negligent financial miscalculation on my father's part that had led to a barrage of class-action lawsuits, a furious public outcry, and the very real, terrifying threat of complete, utter bankruptcy. Maxwell Holdings, the empire built on sand, was now teetering precariously on the absolute brink of total ruin. "Sarah," my mother had pleaded over the phone, her voice choked with genuine raw tears, stripped of its usual veneer of social poise. "You're the only one who can possibly help us now. Your father is having severe heart palpitations. He's barely coherent. Vivian's engagement is unequivocally off. She's utterly devastated. Her life is ruined. We'll lose everything. The house, our reputation, our entire future, everything we've built." The raw despair in her voice was real, palpable, and for a fleeting, dangerous moment, I saw past her superficiality to the genuine, existential fear that lay beneath. It was a fear that twisted my stomach, a familiar tug of misplaced loyalty. And so, with a heavy heart that felt strangely detached from my logical mind, I deferred my job offer. I rationalized it, telling myself it would only be for a few months, just until I could stabilize things, just until the immediate crisis passed. Those few months, as if cursed by some insidious fate, stretched into a year, then 2, then 3. My days became a relentless, soul-crushing cycle of damage control. I pored over reams of complex, often deliberately convoluted contracts. I meticulously combed through mountains of fragmented digital records, often working with archaic, corrupted files. I painstakingly discovered hidden clauses designed to deflect liability, untangled fraudulent subcontractor payments that implicated a web of shadowy figures. I worked tirelessly, often pulling all-nighters that bled into the next day, fueled by lukewarm, stale coffee, and the desperate, irrational hope that I could somehow save them, that my ceaseless efforts would finally, miraculously, earn me the recognition, the love, the familial bond I so desperately, unconsciously craved. I became the ghost in the machine, the silent, unacknowledged architect of their slow, painful recovery, sifting through millions of lines of financial data, uncovering the faint yet damning digital fingerprints of every questionable transaction, every illegal maneuver. My nascent skills as an aspiring cybersecurity analyst and digital forensics expert were honed not in a controlled, sterile lab environment, but in the brutal, unforgiving crucible of an escalating family crisis. I learned to anticipate complex threats, to detect subtle anomalies that others missed, to trace the most minuscule digital breadcrumbs back to their source, even when those sources were deliberately obscured. My brain, once filled with dreams of algorithms and sustainable city planning, became a finely tuned instrument of detection and damage control. During this grueling purgatorial period, my own life withered, became almost invisible. My friends, initially sympathetic and concerned, slowly, inevitably drifted away, their texts becoming less frequent, their calls unanswered. My social media feed became a cruel, mocking gallery of their thriving careers, their exciting adventures, their new relationships, their joyful milestones, while I remained trapped, an unwitting prisoner in a gilded cage of family obligation and mounting despair. I rarely left the house, except for essential errands or clandestine, emotionally draining meetings with high-powered lawyers and exasperated financial experts. My world, once expansive and full of potential, shrank to the suffocating dimensions of Maxwell Holdings' increasingly dire financial woes. My physical and mental health deteriorated alarmingly. I subsisted on a monotonous diet of instant noodles and endless cups of caffeine, my body a fragile vessel for a mind constantly churning with anxieties. My sleep became fragmented, haunted by recurring nightmares of crashing numbers and angry voices. I grew thin, almost gaunt, my complexion pale and translucent, and my eyes, perpetually tired, developed a hollow, haunted quality that reflected the exhaustion of my soul. The pressure from my family was relentless, a constant, suffocating weight. My father, in his rare moments of terrifying lucidity, would erupt into thunderous roars about impending ruin, blaming everyone but himself, the market, the government, his former partners, even me. My mother would dissolve into dramatic, manipulative histrionics, demanding that I work harder, faster, more efficiently to miraculously restore their former illusory glory. Vivian, meanwhile, continued her whirlwind social engagements, her life seemingly untouched by the looming disaster, occasionally deigning to call me with a new, utterly urgent task, always prefaced with that sickeningly sweet, yet undeniably imperative tone. "Sarah, darling, you simply must do this. It's absolutely vital for the family's image, for our very survival." They took my efforts, my sacrifices, my very being, for granted, a given, a natural service I was obliged to perform without question or complaint. They never once offered a genuine thank you, never asked if I was coping, never seemed to notice the dark, bruised circles under my eyes, the unhealthy tremor in my hands, or the profound sadness that had taken root in my spirit. The insidious phrase, family duty, was wielded like a sharp, invisible weapon, binding me inextricably to their endless chaos, their insatiable demands. The true turning point, the moment when the last brittle threads connecting me to their toxic world finally snapped, came subtly at first, a cold, insidious dread creeping into my bones like an unwanted guest. It was the night of the annual Bellwood Charity Gala, the most exclusive, most anticipated event of the year, a crucial opportunity for my parents to publicly rebuild their tarnished social standing and reassure their dwindling, skeptical business contacts. I had spent weeks, almost a month, meticulously preparing a crucial presentation for my father, a complex, almost artistic digital forensic analysis that would unequivocally expose the true culprits behind the Evergreen Towers collapse, shifting the undeniable blame from my father to a corrupt former partner. It was a masterpiece of data recovery, a triumph of legal strategy, and the bitter culmination of 2 years of relentless, thankless work. This presentation, if delivered correctly, with precision and confidence, would, without a doubt, save Maxwell Holdings from utter annihilation. My father was slated to deliver it, to reclaim his public image. That morning, as I put the final, painstaking touches on the digital presentation, a sharp, searing pain shot through my lower abdomen, a sudden, agonizing spasm that made me double over, gasping for breath. I tried to dismiss it, rationalizing it as mere stress or the inevitable consequence of extreme lack of sleep. But the pain intensified, growing sharper, more insistent, a cold, clinical dread seizing me. I knew with a chilling, undeniable certainty that this was far more than just stress or a simple stomach cramp. I'd experienced similar, though significantly milder, pains before, routinely ignored as mere women's troubles, dismissed as inconvenient. This was different. This was terrifying. "Sarah, darling, are you quite all right?" My mother's voice, a saccharine tone laced with an undertone of impatience, cut through my agony. She swept into my home office, impeccably dressed for the gala, her face a mask of polite concern that didn't quite reach her perfectly made-up eyes. She barely glanced at my pale, contorted face, her gaze immediately drawn to the glowing screen of my laptop. "Are you almost done with that report? Your father truly needs it." He's terribly nervous about tonight, you know. His reputation hinges on this. I think I need to go to urgent care, I gasped, clutching my stomach, the pain a white-hot spear. The pain is quite severe, Mother. I can barely stand. My mother paused, a flicker of irritation, almost disdain, crossing her perfect features. Urgent care? Now, Sarah, really. It's the gala night, the most important event of the season. Can't it possibly wait? You know how absolutely vital this is for the family. Your father relies entirely on you for the final overview. Just take some ibuprofen, dear, and rest for an hour. You'll be perfectly fine. She gave me a dismissive wave of her perfectly manicured hand, already turning to admire her reflection in the ornate gilded mirror on the wall, completely oblivious to my agony. Don't be dramatic, Sarah. We simply don't have time for this inconvenience. Just then, Vivian entered, equally impeccable, her silk gown rustling softly as she moved, a faint scent of expensive perfume trailing behind her. She glanced at me with a bored, almost indifferent expression, as if I were a minor, irritating distraction. Oh, is she having another one of her episodes? Sarah, honestly, you're always so fragile, so melodramatic. Pull yourself together. Dad absolutely needs that report now. She offered a saccharine, yet utterly insincere, smile. Don't you dare ruin tonight for us, Sarah. It's too important. I looked at them then, truly looked at them, my vision blurring not just from pain but from a sudden, stark clarity. My mother, so utterly consumed by appearances, her deep-seated fear of social embarrassment outweighing my obvious, undeniable distress. Vivian, so accustomed to my perpetual sacrifice, my endless availability, seeing me as nothing more than a tool to be utilized, a problem to be fixed, an inconvenience to be ignored. In that excruciating moment, the years of quiet resentment, the suppressed anger, the profound loneliness solidified into a hard, cold core of devastating realization. They didn't care, not about me, only about what I could do for them, what benefit I could provide to their crumbling facade. I clenched my jaw, pushing down another wave of searing nausea, my body trembling with the effort. I need to go, I whispered, my voice barely audible, gathering my phone and car keys with trembling fingers. Fine, my mother snapped, exasperated, her patience finally worn thin. But make absolutely certain that report is fully ready before you leave. Text it to your father's assistant, on his personal line, and for goodness sake don't call us tonight, we'll be far too busy. I drove myself to the nearest urgent care clinic, my hands shaking uncontrollably on the steering wheel, each bump in the road sending a fresh, excruciating wave of agony through my lower abdomen. My vision blurred, tears of pain and indignation stinging my eyes. By the time I stumbled into the reception area, I was pale, sweating profusely and barely able to string together coherent words. The doctor on duty took one look at me, his face grim, his expression immediately changing to one of grave concern, and without a moment's hesitation, he immediately called for an ambulance. "Internal bleeding," I heard him say, his voice distant and muffled, yet chillingly clear. "Possible ruptured ovarian cyst. Or, given her presentation, something far, far worse." In the ambulance, the red and blue lights flashing frantically, the siren wailing a mournful, urgent lament through the night, I fumbled desperately with my phone, my fingers numb and clumsy with pain. I tried to call my parents, my sister. Each call went straight to voicemail, their phones likely deliberately turned off for the gala to avoid any unwelcome interruptions. "Hey, it's me," I gasped into my father's voicemail, pain making my words slurred, barely intelligible. "They're taking me to St. Jude's Hospital. Something's really wrong. Internal bleeding. It hurts, Dad." Another wave of excruciating pain cut me off, stealing my breath, forcing a strangled cry from my lips. I tried my mother, then Vivian. Vivian actually picked up on the fourth ring, her voice muffled by a cacophony of background music, clinking glasses and polite laughter. "Sarah, I can't talk right now. The gala's literally starting, and the caterer completely messed up the champagne order. It's a total disaster." Her voice was tinged with genuine annoyance. not concern. "Vivian," I choked out, tears of pain and absolute desperation stinging my eyes, mingling with the sweat on my forehead. "I'm in an ambulance. They think it's internal bleeding. I need someone here. Please." A beat of pregnant silence on the other end, then her voice laced with profound irritation. "Oh, Sarah, seriously? Tonight? Can't you just take a cab or call a friend? I'm literally walking into the ballroom. Dad's about to make his speech, and I can't find Mother. We can't possibly leave now. Just call me tomorrow, okay? Or text. I'm sure it's just a stomach bug. You're always so dramatic." She hung up. The line went dead. The phone, a cold, unfeeling slab of metal, slipped from my numb fingers, clattering onto the ambulance floor. I was alone. Utterly, terribly, irrevocably alone. My own family, the people for whom I had sacrificed 3 grueling years of my precious youth, my burgeoning career, my very soul, were choosing champagne flutes and social climbing over my desperate, life-threatening cry for help. The realization hit me with the raw, brutal force of a physical blow, colder and sharper than any surgical knife, more devastating than any physical pain. I meant absolutely nothing to them. I was disposable. I remember only flashes of what came next. The bright, sterile, almost blinding lights of the operating room, the muffled clinical voices of the medical team, their words distant yet chillingly clear, the profound, terrifying sense of utter emptiness, of a complete void, as my body fought a losing battle for survival. I remember the doctor's voice, calm and detached yet resonating with an undeniable finality, saying, "We've lost her. Time of death ... And then, nothing. For 78 agonizing seconds, I was gone. My heart had stopped. My world had gone utterly, irrevocably, mercifully dark. My life, as I knew it, had ended. But then, against all odds, a violent jolt, a sudden blinding flicker, the shocking, agonizing impact of defibrillator paddles, the fierce, burning pain as life, against every conceivable probability, rushed back into my body, flooding my veins, igniting my consciousness. I woke up hours later in the intensive care unit, disoriented, profoundly weak, my body a landscape of aches and tremors, but undeniably, miraculously, alive. A nurse, a kind, empathetic woman with weary yet deeply compassionate eyes, was gently checking my vitals, her touch surprisingly comforting. "You're awake," she whispered, her voice soft, hushed, yet filled with genuine relief. "You gave us quite a scare, young lady. You were gone for almost 78 seconds there, clinically dead, but you're a fighter, Serafina, a true warrior." "My family?" I croaked, my throat raw and parched, my voice a mere rasp. "Did anyone come? Did anyone call?" The hope was a fragile, almost imperceptible flicker. She shook her head slowly, her expression compassionate, yet tinged with sorrow. "No calls, dear. Just a few texts from a relative, asking about our report. A business document, it seemed. But no one came. Not through the night, not in the morning. It's just you and us here, love." That was it. The final, definitive cut. The last, sharp twist of the knife, but this time it severed the last remaining, almost invisible cords of obligation and illusion that still bound me to them. In those 78 seconds of non-existence, I had shed the person I used to be, the person they had molded me into, the fixer, the loyal, self-sacrificing daughter, the silent martyr. I was reborn, not into a new family, but into a profound and liberating solitude, a terrifying yet exhilarating freedom. I was finally free. Recovery was excruciatingly slow, agonizing in its deliberateness. Physically, my body gradually healed, the wounds slowly closing, but the emotional and psychological scars were deeper, far more insidious. During those long, solitary days in the sterile hospital room and the even longer introspective weeks of recovery at a temporary rehabilitation facility, paid for entirely by the initial emergency fund I had meticulously set aside from my invoice settlement, a testament to my own foresight, I had an abundance of time to think, to reflect, to truly reckon with my past. I finally, undeniably, understood the true, devastating cost of my family duty. It wasn't just the time I had lost, the money I had forgone, the promising career I'd put on hold. It was the insidious erosion of my self-worth, the systematic silencing of my own fundamental needs and desires, the constant, soul-crushing feeling of being utterly undervalued, dismissed, and used. The invoice spreadsheet had been a desperate, silent cry for recognition, a plea to be seen. My temporary death was a primal, agonizing scream, a final, desperate act of self-preservation. The world I returned to, after my brush with oblivion, was utterly, irrevocably changed. Not just my physical weakness, my still trembling hands, but my entire perspective, my very understanding of existence. The Bellwood Charity Gala had been a complete, unmitigated disaster for the Maxwells. My father, without my meticulously prepared, indispensable presentation, had fumbled his speech, his words stumbling, his confidence shattered, revealing the true, undeniable fragility of his entire company. The news of his former partner's extensive fraud broke the next day, a revelation I had painstakingly uncovered. But so too did the devastating news of Maxwell Holdings' own precarious, unrecoverable financial state, unable to fully capitalize on the revealed truth without my comprehensive, strategically vital data analysis. The empire, already built on shifting sands, began to genuinely, rapidly crumble. Lawsuits mounted, investors, sensing the imminent collapse, pulled out their capital in a frantic exodus, and the public scrutiny, fueled by whispers of scandal and my father's public gaffes, intensified into a relentless, unforgiving spotlight. From my quiet, almost monastic recovery room, I observed it all with a detached, almost scientific curiosity. My phone, which had been chillingly silent during my crisis, now buzzed incessantly, almost vibrating off the nightstand, with frantic, desperate calls from Michael, then my mother, then Vivian. They were no longer demanding my help, no longer commanding. They were begging for it, their voices laced with a pathetic desperation I had never heard before. "Sarah, you have to help us. Dad's company is absolutely collapsing. We're losing everything. The house, our reputation, our entire lives are being destroyed." My mother's voice, once so haughty and composed, now sounded brittle, broken, and utterly desperate. Vivian, usually so composed and calculating, sounded genuinely panicked, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. I didn't answer. Not a single call. I didn't send a single reply. Their calls became increasingly desperate, then shifted subtly to thinly veiled threats, then back to pathetic pleas, then angry accusations. I let them all go to voicemail, deleting them unlistened, my finger pressing the delete button with a quiet, resolute finality. I had nothing left to give them. My well of sacrifice was utterly, irrevocably dry. My lawyers, whom I had shrewdly retained from the initial invoice dispute, acted swiftly and decisively. With Maxwell Holdings teetering on the very edge of complete bankruptcy, and armed with my meticulously documented, irrefutable evidence of their prior exploitation of my labor, my forced servitude, and their appalling neglect during my medical crisis, they presented a formidable, undeniable case. The settlement that followed was not merely financial. It was a profound, absolute severance, a formal and legal separation from the Maxwell family's toxic financial and emotional entanglement. I received a substantial portion of the remaining liquid assets of Maxwell Holdings, effectively buying my absolute freedom and providing me with the necessary capital to truly start anew, unburdened. In exchange, I agreed to formally sever all financial ties and relinquish any further claim on the family's rapidly crumbling estate. It was a clean break, brutal in its finality, yet utterly, undeniably necessary for my very survival, for the rebirth of my soul. The sprawling mansion in Bellwood, Their ultimate symbol of pride and joy, their carefully constructed illusion, was eventually foreclosed upon, swallowed by the waves of debt. The family, unable to sustain their lavish, entitled lifestyle, retreated from public view, their carefully constructed facade finally, definitively shattered, exposing the emptiness within. I moved to Seattle, a city that felt not just miles but light years away from the suffocating expectations, the silent judgments, and the emotional desolation of Bellwood. I found the compact, sun-drenched apartment on the lively fringes perfect for my new, independent life. I immediately enrolled in a rigorous master's degree program in cybersecurity, specializing in digital forensics. My harrowing, intensely practical experience with Maxwell Holdings had gifted me with an unparalleled, almost intuitive understanding of data trails, complex financial fraud schemes, and the inherent vulnerabilities of sprawling corporate systems. I excelled in my studies, devouring every textbook, every line of code, every intricate case study, driven by a newfound fierce hunger for knowledge and mastery. My past wasn't a burden anymore. It was a crucible that had forged me, providing a unique, hard-won expertise that set me apart. I worked part-time as a junior analyst for a small, ethical cybersecurity firm, putting my rapidly growing skills to direct use protecting vulnerable businesses and individuals from digital threats and corporate malfeasance. My colleagues, a diverse group of brilliant and eccentric individuals, quickly became my chosen family, a true support system devoid of judgment. My boss, Dr. Anya Sharma, a fierce and brilliant woman in her 50s, a trailblazer in the field, saw my quiet dedication, my relentless precision, and my uncanny ability to spot anomalies that others missed. She mentored me, pushed me beyond my perceived limits, and more importantly, believed in me without reservation, seeing my potential, not my past wounds. My personal life slowly, tentatively, then confidently began to bloom. I cautiously reconnected with a few old friends who genuinely cared, those who had seen through my previous facade, and with careful optimism, I forged new, authentic bonds. I discovered a profound passion for hiking the lush, rain-kissed trails of the Pacific Northwest, finding solace, strength, and a deep connection to nature in the quiet grandeur of ancient forests. I joined a local hackerspace, not for illicit activities, but for the sheer intellectual joy of collaborative problem-solving, of unraveling complex puzzles with like-minded individuals. And then, I even met someone, a compassionate, intelligent, and wonderfully grounded software engineer named Ben, who understood my need for solitude, my quiet intensity, and cherished the unique, resilient person I had become. He listened patiently and empathetically when I occasionally spoke of my past, never judging, only offering unwavering support, a gentle hand, and a steadfast belief in my future, in my inherent worth. I built a formidable reputation for my meticulousness, my unflappable composure under pressure, and my uncanny ability to solve the most complex digital mysteries. After graduating with top honors, I was quickly promoted to a senior analyst position, and then, in a momentous leap of faith, offered a partnership in a new venture, Phoenix Digital Forensics, a name I deliberately chose to symbolize my own profound rebirth from the ashes of my past. We specialized in helping victims of corporate fraud, digital exploitation, and complex cybercrimes, providing a crucial service I deeply wished I had access to when I was lost in my own family's financial and emotional chaos. My office, clean, minimalist, and bathed in natural light, boasted a large window overlooking the vibrant, ever-evolving city skyline of Seattle, a breathtaking, tangible symbol of the future I was actively, purposefully building, brick by digital brick. One late afternoon, many months after I had left Bellwood and all its painful memories behind, an email appeared in my inbox. It was from a desperate-sounding lawyer representing a newly formed Maxwell Legacy Fund. They were making a last-ditch effort to salvage what little remained of my father's once grand reputation, to stave off the complete, definitive collapse of their tarnished family name. The email, carefully worded, formally requested my professional assistance. They had uncovered compelling evidence of further, extensive financial malfeasance by my father's old business partner, the very man I had initially uncovered. But the crucial data was locked, heavily encrypted, and seemingly beyond their internal capabilities to retrieve. They needed a top-tier digital forensic expert. They needed me. I looked at the email, my finger hovering over the delete button, a wave of familiar, bitter memories washing over me. The temptation for vengeance, for a final, cutting refusal that would seal their fate, was undeniably strong, almost intoxicating. But then I paused. I thought of the innocent employees who might still be affected by the collapse of that business, however tainted its legacy. I thought of the countless families who relied on the remnants of that struggling entity, and I thought of the quiet satisfaction of using my unique, hard-won skills not for personal retribution, but for a larger form of justice, to right a wrong that transcended my own personal history. I crafted a reply. It was professional, precise, and utterly devoid of any personal emotion. I listed my rates, my terms, and my stringent conditions for engagement. They were astronomical, reflecting not just my unparalleled expertise, but the sheer urgency and desperation of their situation. I also stipulated a non-negotiable condition. Any recovered funds beyond a certain predetermined threshold would be directly channeled into community rebuilding projects in Bellwood, specifically focusing on affordable housing, educational programs for at-risk youth, and mental health support services, areas that had been systematically neglected by my family's former self-serving ventures. It was a chance to transmute their past destruction into future healing, using their own resources, their own mistakes, as the catalyst for positive change. They balked, of course. My father, in a rare direct phone call, spoke to me, his voice a disorienting mixture of genuine outrage, desperate pleading, and lingering arrogance. "Sarah, you can't be serious. Those rates are absolutely absurd. And the conditions. It's our money. This is blackmail." "It's my expertise, Father," I said, my voice calm, unwavering, resonating with the quiet, unshakable authority I now possessed. "And it's a chance for you to finally contribute something truly meaningful, to turn the tide of your legacy from ruin to genuine redemption. Take it or leave it. I have other, more valuable commitments." I hung up before he could respond further, severing the connection with a satisfying click. Days later, the signed contract arrived, delivered by a frantic, sweating courier. They had accepted. I approached the project with the same detached precision I would any other high-stakes client, but with a quiet, deep, almost spiritual satisfaction. I meticulously unlocked the encrypted data, exposed the full, intricate extent of the fraud, and recovered a significant, truly substantial sum, enough to not only stabilize the struggling Maxwell Legacy Fund, but to kickstart several impactful, desperately needed community projects in Bellwood. I delivered the final, comprehensive report, a masterpiece of digital forensics, and received my substantial fee. There were no emotional thank yous, no tearful reunions, no attempts at reconciliation. Just a quiet, grudging acknowledgement of a job meticulously done, of an obligation reluctantly fulfilled. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. My story doesn't conclude with a dramatic, cathartic confrontation or a tearful fairy tale reconciliation. It concludes with a profound, unshakable sense of peace, a quiet triumph of the spirit. I built a life that is truly, unequivocally mine, defined by my own values, my diligent work, and the people I consciously choose to surround myself with, my chosen family of colleagues and friends. I found my strength in the quiet pursuit of knowledge, in the relentless logic of cybersecurity, and in the unwavering belief that truth, however deeply hidden, however painfully suppressed, will always, inevitably, find its way to light. My 78 seconds of death on that operating table taught me the ultimate lesson. Life is precious. Every single breath is a gift, and every moment is an invaluable opportunity to choose who you are, to define your own worth, to forge your own path, and to build a future utterly free from the lingering, corrosive echoes of a painful past. I still live in Seattle, still work tirelessly to protect digital landscapes, and still contribute to building better, more equitable communities. My biological family, though financially stable thanks to my intervention, remains distant, their world forever separated from mine by an unbridgeable chasm of past hurts. And that's okay. The lingering bitterness, the gnawing resentment has finally faded, replaced by a profound understanding and a quiet, dignified sense of triumph. The suffocating weight of their expectations, their cutting judgment, their chilling indifference has lifted, revealing the clear sky above. I am Serafina Maxwell, a woman who faced her own mortality, walked through the deepest darkness, endured unimaginable pain, and emerged not only stronger, freer, and more resilient, but more authentically herself than she ever thought possible. My greatest legacy is not what I inherited or what I saved from ruin. It is what I meticulously built from scratch, for myself, by myself, on my own terms, infused with my own values. And in the quiet strength of my chosen path, in the deep satisfaction of a life truly lived, I am truly, unequivocally, wonderfully free.